Hey there gamers, welcome to my Modern Assault Guide. My name is Mana Chalice and today I'm going to be talking about the overall pacing of Assault as well as how to set your team up for success, starting from the draft all the way to the very end. Now if there's anything you want to see in the future regarding more detailed tactics or in-depth builds, drop me a comment and let me know. But with that out of the way, let's get right into it. First things first, we'll start with the draft. The first thing you want to consider is your team composition. A good rule of thumb is that you typically want to have 2 frontliners and hopefully a hunter for towers and late game DPS. Having another high damage mobility god that can flex between the front and the back line is also a huge plus to have. Now your team's also going to get a healer, which cannot be re-rolled, but can be traded with an ally if you don't want to play them. Now what you want to do here is you want to keep the gods that complement and synergize with one another and help your team re-roll the gods that do not. Everybody only gets 1 re-roll and nobody needs 4 assassins on their team. So trade and re-roll and trade back with your team to help get a more balanced team comp. Just because you got a god that you like doesn't mean you should keep it necessarily. You might end up crippling your entire team comp. Now number 2 is going to be for the tanks. If you're a tank, one of the first things you should be considering is whether or not you're going to get a Heartward Amulet for your first item. Heartward provides some of the most valuable stats in the early game of Assault, giving the wearer 45 magical protections, 200 health, and an aura that provides allied gods within 70 units, 15 magical protections, and 30 MP5. Mana is one of the most valuable resources in Assault. And if your team runs out of mana, then your team can't poke. And if your team can't poke, then your team can't get any kills. So the first thing you should be considering is whether or not you're going to get this item. One of the few times you should not get this item is if the enemy team is an all-physical team, or if they only have maybe 1 magical damage dealer, you probably shouldn't get Heartward. And your team should build their mana for themselves with their own items. To piggyback off of tip 2, if you aren't the tank, you still need to get your mana squared away. If you aren't going to be getting a Heartward on your team, then you should be focusing on items that give you a large amount of MP5, such as Heartseeker, Dominance, and Griffin Wings for physical damage gods. For magical gods, items such as Rod of Tahuti, Charon's Coin, and Doom Orb make excellent first choices. Chronos Pendant may provide MP5, but it also provides too much cooldown, and you'll still end up running out of mana as you'll be using your abilities too often. Only go for Chronos first item if you're getting a Heartward on your team as well. It'll be enough to supplement your mana usage from the cooldowns. Next we need to talk about an elephant in the room, Medcloak, a relic that pulses out 3 waves of healing and mana. It sounds pretty good, right? Well, it's not that bad, I'll admit it. But there are arguably better options that you can take. If you're a squishy god with no dash or escape, then you should almost always be buying beads. CC is king in this game, and if you get grabbed in a 5v5 game mode, no Medcloak is gonna save you. You need to get beads and get the hell out of danger so that you can keep providing value for your team. Or maybe you got Ares, Serb, or Xing Tian. These guys should almost always be getting Blink first relic. It's a huge engagement tool, and since this is a 1-lane game mode, the enemy will likely see you coming, and they're going to run away from you every time you try to engage them. So close that gap with a Blink and set your team up for success. Other relics to consider, in no particular order, are Aegis, Heavenly Wings, Horrific, Frenzy, and Shell. So, you've got a decent team comp, your tank is supplementing your team's mana, you have a good first item, and you have good first relics. And the match has barely started, and your team has already done multiple things to increase their chances of success. So what's the next thing that you might want to be focusing on? That's going to be countering and targeting. Are you an assassin playing high damage? Find the squishiest target that's going to have the hardest time getting away from you. Is there an enemy god that counters your god? Communicate with your team. You might have an ally that can counter them back. allowing you to focus on someone else, or stack the damage with your ally and eliminate your potential counter. allowing you to have more freedom to do as you please against the enemy. The team with the most layers generally wins at the end. Now this next one is, in my opinion, one of the most important ones and can make or break any match of Assault, and that's knowing when to die. You might be thinking to yourself, if Assault is all about longevity, then going a whole match and not dying is a perfect game. And you'd be wrong. Let me explain. The longer the match goes on, the more you and everybody else levels, gains gold, and buys items. Well, if everyone's level 20 and full build while you're still rocking only one item from the start, then you're going to hit like a wet noodle and be useless for your team. You provide no value other than maybe CC if you happen to have it. All while having 8k gold in your pocket. Do yourself a favor and just go die. That way you can buy 3 full items and come back stronger than ever. But don't just hand yourself over to the enemy so easily either. Are some of your allies already dead? Best to wait till they can come back and defend. Otherwise, the enemy's just going to walk right through the 2 allies you left behind to defend a tower against 5 enemies. Or maybe you just got done wiping the enemy team and took the tower over. Now it's a perfect time to go die. You'll come back about the same time as the enemy too. This is all known as a reset. Bonus points if you can die to the enemy tower without taking damage from an enemy god. You still die, but the enemy team gets no gold and no XP for it, nor do they get the bounty on you either. Now for number 7, I want to take a moment to talk about healers. In Smite, there are no dedicated healers, only gods that have some healing in their kits. However, in Assault, healers are so important that a good healer versus a bad healer can make or break an entire match. Because no one can back to Fountain, the ability to constantly provide healing to your team skyrockets the value of gods with heals. This is another reason why Heartward is so important for your team. If the healer runs out of mana, they can't heal the tank, and if the tank dies, then everybody dies. This is how it's always worked in video games, and Smite's no different in this regard. Not only that, but some of the new heal bolstering items can provide insane spikes of power, healing, or attack speed. There's really no reason not to get them. Oh, and remember, more cooldowns always equals more healing. Keep that one in mind. Number 8 is going to be about the healing orbs that you can get throughout the map. They provide a small movement speed bonus for whoever picks them up, as well as 3 pulses of healing and mana for the allies in the surrounding area. Now something to keep in mind with these is 1, don't die over them. It's not worth it. If you see the enemy team going for it, you don't need to dive in there and try to take it from them. If anything, it's probably bait and you're just going to get CC'd and nuked into oblivion. So don't do it. 2, if you have allies pinging to go for the orbs, go to the orbs. There's really no reason that you don't need healing or mana in Assault, unless you just came back to lane. But even then, it's better to just stay grouped up in your team. This is a 5v5 game mode, constant team fights. If half your team goes to go grab an orb, and the other half stays in lane to try to do something against the 5 enemies that are staring them right in the face, they're probably going to get mollywopped. So it's best to just stick together, go get orbs, top off as much as you can on heals and mana anytime you can, and go back into the fight together. Now speaking of jump parties at the start of the match, that brings us to tip number 9. And that is, don't interrupt the jump party at the start of the match. Reason being, the enemy team is very likely to focus you entirely for the first 5 or 10 minutes until you possibly rage quit, so I just wouldn't do it. It's generally once the minions start clashing, that's when it's free game to start, doing whatever you want to do. But if you do anything before that, you're likely going to get focused. Now, if you're a big tanky boy, by all means, in my opinion, I'm here for blood, so go for it, because they're not going to be able to kill you, hopefully, depends on their team comp, and generally, if you're a tank, you want the enemy team to focus you, because that way your damaged boys can do damage, so it's a win-win for tanks. I say disrupt it, but if you're a squishy, I wouldn't do it. for our final tip, tip 10, it's going to be kind of a two-parter. And that is, if you're in retreat, commit to retreating. Don't wait around and backpedal while you're looking at the enemy, trying to find ways to disrupt them or something. Just commit to retreating. Pick up as many orbs along the way, reset under tower, and try to remain as healthy as possible for the next engagement that you're going to get in. Otherwise, you guys are just going to get picked off one by one by one and feel real dumb while the enemy just takes a free tower. Now the second part to this is, if you're in retreat, there's a good opportunity to use a turn and burn on the enemy. If they're getting a little bit overconfident in their rundown, maybe they're separated, you've got your ult back and you've got a buddy with you, you're communicating, flip a 180 and ult that guy right in the face. Take him out and you might turn the tides for this entire engagement. And now you're running them down. The biggest thing you can take away from this video is communicating with your team about roles, Heartward, the items you're going to be building, countering the enemy, turn and burn, retreating, getting the orbs, and hunkering down under tower. All of this is going to be achieved successfully by communicating with your team. Some of the best matches I've ever had are in Assault, where everybody communicates effectively. With all that out of the way, gamers, my name's Mana Chalice, and I appreciate you for sticking with me and watching this. I hope I helped increase at least somebody's gameplay in Assault, and if there's anything in the future that you want to see on more detailed tactics and item builds and this, that, and the other, drop me a comment and let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.